All right, we have been teasing this all morning long. You're looking live now on Mount Clemens, where that is the office of the Macomb County Executive. He's joining us live now. Mark Hackel is right here. There's so much happening in Macomb County, so much to talk about. But I do want to start with the roads. I don't want to say they're the worst in Metro Detroit, but you have some challenges. And I think you and I were talking earlier, somewhere north of $2 billion is needed to fix all the roads in the county. You don't have that kind of cash. Where can you get that kind of cash? Because I know the funds are drying up in Lansing.
Yeah, and we account for about 40% of those roads in Macomb County. You know, you got county road departments, you got cities that are responsible, and then obviously you got the state that are responsible for some of the main trunk lines. But when you talk about that, you know, that billions of dollars that we need right now, that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for billions of dollars to fix all of our road problems in Macomb County. What we're looking for is kind of a new way of funding that can support progressively getting better. So in other words, when we look at our roads right now, the funding that we have, we continuously see the decline in the roads and our ability to keep up with that. So we're looking at a number that would help us at least start seeing progressively a change in that fashion. So again, the legislature, they talk about, you know, different models, different ways of figuring out how do they increase the funding. That's something that's going to be sustainable year after year. And you know, we've never been able to, I guess, if you will, make a decision, the legislature, to figure out how do they sustain road funding at the local level. Governor, credit to her, she was able to figure out how do we bond roads for the state and the state highways, and we're seeing those roads being fixed. And the question is, how do they pay back those bonds and the challenges there? So I've talked to Matt Hall, Eric Nesbitt, and the governor, and I'm comfortable knowing that they're actually going to be doing something shortly here to actually find some way to sustain the road funding for locals. We're looking at about 100% increase in road funding for just the county roads, and if that comes through, people are going to see an incredible change in the roads that are happening not only in front of their homes, but the main thoroughways that they travel through in and around the county.
So you said if. Is that a key word? What happens? What needs to happen for that to happen?
Yeah, I think you got to get the both sides to settle the differences that they have, whether it's Democrats and Republicans, and come to the realization that they will benefit from this in an election cycle. That's what most politicians kind of worry about is, you know, how do I get myself reelected? Well, I think if they solve the road funding issue, they're going to find that the public is going to be incredibly satisfied, whatever that decision is, because they're going to see that their actual tax dollars are going to something that's most important to them, and I hear about every day, fix the damn roads.
Right,
and we can't fix the damn roads unless we fix the damn funding.
So is there a new formula being proposed then? I mean, if we're getting additional funding for roads, then that means that money is coming from somewhere else. Do we know what that answer is?
Everybody talks about Act 51 and try to figure out how do you change, you know, lane miles to actual, you know, the number of lanes as opposed to that. That I don't think is going to be touched. I think that's been talked about for too long, and it's an incredible challenge. So yes, there's going to be some different funding. Is it going to mean increased taxes? Is it going to be shifting of funding for other areas within the budget? There's a conversation that's taking place. I'm one of those that's going to be supportive of whatever that decision is. We will help the legislature try to get our representatives coming from Macomb County to support that. So I think there's a clear path forward. I think there's going to be an opportunity because you've got both sides. At least I know the Republicans are committed to doing this. I know the governor is committed to doing this. It's making sure the Democrats are satisfied with their input as they kind of muddle through this. I think it's going to take a while, but I think by the end of the year, we're finally going to have something coming out of this legislature.
Do you think that is one of the key issues that taxpayers in Macomb County or Oakland or Wayne care about?
No question. I mean, since day one, I've been doing this county executive responsibility for the last 15 years, and it is still from day one and currently every day. That's what I hear people talking about is, you know, the roads in front of their homes, their subdivisions, you know, main thoroughways going through the county. People are constantly concerned about the roads and fixing those roads, and that has been our number one challenge is we could fix every road. I look at Mountain Road. That was the poster child of bad roads around the entire state of Michigan, and we were able to fix that. How do we fix it? We got funding from the federal government, state government, and county. We actually got the funding to actually support that, and now it is no longer one of the roads people are talking about. In fact, when they do talk about Mountain Road, they're amazed at the transformation. So we can fix it if we have the funding.
I don't know if you have the data in front of you, but I know there's been lots of grading on roads. Where do yours stand in the county?
Yeah, that's the challenge. In other words, they call it the red, green, and yellow. So in other words, we have a lot of roads that are now turning into the red situation, which means they're challenged where we need to fix them. I mean, we've got to tear them up and do something different. The yellow are meaning they're getting to the point where they're going to be in that green, or in that red area where we're going to have a problem. We're seeing more of that transformation from yellow to red as opposed opposed to fixing roads and having the green pasture.
What's the percentage of how many are red or
right
getting
now,
there?
Well, well over 50%.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that's the challenge we're facing, and we're seeing the yellow that are going to be transferring into that same section there quicker. So that's what we need that sustainable funding for.
Sure.
So that when we do fix them, we're starting to see that progression towards having better roads. More of the green roads, if you will.
Not a Band-Aid fix. Right. Let's talk about Selfridge for a little while, because the new fighter mission there was a huge win, not for the base, but for your economy as well. And I don't want to say people forget about that, but that is a major trickle down that injects probably millions into Macomb County.
Yeah, no question about it. Again, the governor did the right thing. I got to say that, because there's this
She took a lot of flack for working on both sides there.
Surprising. And again, it was, I think, a faction within the Democratic Party. But with that being said, I don't think anybody would disagree. That's what the governor's supposed to be doing, is on behalf of the people of the state of Michigan, support initiatives and things that need to be done. And this we've been talking about for decades. And so the governor did that alongside President Trump, accepted the fact that we're going to get a new fighter mission. You're going to get 21 new F-15EXs coming to Macomb County, Selfridge Air Base. That's an enhancement, not just to Selfridge. It's an enhancement to every other base within the state of Michigan. It's an enhancement to our defense industry. So this was without question the most responsible thing the governor could have done, was go there and say, yes, we want these. And on top of that, there was the statement made by the president that we're also going to get to be able to keep the refuelers. So if you think about it, 21 the F-15s coming.
The acronyms get me too.
I know. The F-15EX is coming to Selfridge Air Base. That's about a $2.1 billion investment. Along with those refuelers, you're talking about another $1.5 billion. We're looking at about $3.5 billion of airplanes coming to Selfridge Air Base.
And then the people and the mechanics and the pilot, everybody behind that, they live on base or in Macomb County.
And in Boeing having a presence here, you're going to see, obviously it's going to be an increased presence on those that are dealing with, the fighters and as well as those refuelers, and it's going to have an increase in the manufacturing happening in and around Southeast Michigan. So
that's what I want to ask you too, is that, I don't know the names and I haven't been inside there because they're defense contractors and we can't take a look inside, but I get the feeling that when an investment and a commitment like that is made, does that then mean that you've got more manufacturers, more contractors, more people willing, aerospace, to build along Mound and Van Dyke and start more projects in Macomb County?
That's exactly what it means, Nick. And so we're excited about that, because we're already starting to hear from a lot of those folks that are dealing with this, from the manufacturers and those that are building the planes. They're already calling and reaching out, trying to figure out how do they have a presence here in Macomb County. And so with that, the state is already trying to figure out how do they make sure that there's the path forward for them to relocate to Southeast Michigan. And we're doing the same with our planning department. So it's an exciting time, and it's not just about the F-15s that are coming. It's about other opportunities that I think that's going to produce.
Right. Other things happening in Macomb County. I don't think you can drive through the Mount Clemens area and not notice the construction at the Sheriff's Department and the jail. That was a huge project. I don't know if everyone understands why it had to happen, though. So please explain why.
No question. I mean, number one, we've had aging facilities, that were built on. It's a complex. What do I mean? Year after decade, they'd build new facilities, but they didn't get rid of the old. So, we have two major areas within, the housing units that are at that site, that were built in the 1950s, 1960s. People need to watch a movie where you see something, a throwback like Alcatraz. That's exactly what these facilities were, and they weren't sustainable. They're a challenge for us, and they're not the appropriate type of setting for the type of clients we're getting into the jails themselves.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is you got people with mental health and substance use problems or challenges, and we got to figure out how do we address that. And so the new facility that we're creating is going to take down some of the old, replace the beds that are necessary in the facility, but right-size the facility for people that have mental health and substance use problems. So that if we are dealing with them, we've got to figure out how do we deal with their challenges that they're facing, as opposed to just housing them and then putting them back out on the street.
Right.
And we're also making sure that when they come in, the central intake and assessment is about making sure we're assessing these folks when they come in 24/7, 365. Everyone in the county, every law enforcement agency that arrests somebody now has a location to drop these people off. The crimes that they commit, to put them through the system, but we're going to look at them and make a determination as mental health, substance use, and we're working with those that are subject matter experts in the facility. And if we do have to get them out of the facility and hand them off, folks are going to be there that understand these issues, that are going to be able to help with that treatment portion of it.
What would you say the numbers are on the number of mental health inmates versus substance abuse versus, I don't know if hardened criminal is the right term, but those, this is going to sound terrible, but that need to be locked up versus those that need some kind of other help?
Yeah, if you think about it, probably 50 to 60% of the people that come in there have mental health or substance use issues. But the minute somebody is dropped off at the doors of the county jail, it could be just a normal person that got themselves caught up in a situation, maybe a drunk driving. When they come in there, they themselves are going to start to have some kind of an emotional situation that is going to be created by the fact that they're now in a place that they wouldn't normally be.
Sure.
And so we've got to address that. We've got to deal with that initially. But when you're talking about serious issues, mental health, substance use, that was a problem we faced in the 80s when they closed down mental health institutions, thinking there was going to be community-based support to deal with that. There wasn't. No community was prepared for that when they shut those down. And we found that jails became the new location. People with mental health and substance use issues found their way to, and
But not
hospital
properly
settings.
equipped to deal with it.
Right, and hospital settings. So there has been a challenge over the decades that we have not quite met. We're finally getting to the point where we're going to be able to do that with this new facility we have for those that come in contact with law enforcement.
We're running out of time, but I did want to ask you a little bit about not only the current governor's race, but the Detroit mayoral race, because, you know, Detroit is not in your county, but I think what happens here in Detroit affects Macomb County. What are your thoughts on the current candidates and where that race is headed?
You know, I looked at the candidates as, you know, I tend to look at it as when I first came in as county executive, what was my first mindset and thought about the region? And, you know, mine was, you know what, Macomb adds value to the region adds value to Macomb. How do we embrace that? And I often see, you know, these shirts that people wear and kind of that mantra is out there, you know, everybody versus Detroit. And I kind of want to flip the script on that. I'd hope the new mayor thinks that way too, and have more of a mindset of, you know, everybody with Detroit. You know, how do we get the mayor that's coming in to say, you know what, we want everybody to be focused on Detroit, but we want you to have a part of what we're doing, but we also want to reach out to the region. What is it that the region is looking for? Because we are the urban center of the region. And so with that, there's a lot of things we do, arts, entertainment, sports venues, eateries. There's so much that goes on in Detroit that people from the entire region embrace and support.
Right.
So everybody wants to be with Detroit.
Yeah.
And so I would hope that that mindset carries itself through, and we are excited to work with whatever candidate comes through this election as the new mayor.
I'm getting a hard rap, but I have to ask you one more question. Your name has been tossed around as a potential governor candidate for the state of Michigan. Where are you in that
I
discussion?
think about that. It goes back and forth in my mind as well. You know, the challenge is more the political side of it. You know, you're able to get through that, and, you know, the raising of the funds and trying to get out there, the endorsements and all that. I enjoy what I'm doing. Let's face it, I still miss being the sheriff. That was one of my favorite jobs. I adored that. But, you know, that's still to be told. I know it's getting to a point where you either got to make a decision, otherwise you're going to be cut out of the herd because there's so many other names there. But I haven't quite closed the door on it yet. You know, it's more the political side of it that I'm trying to figure out, you know, how do you make it through that as opposed to being able to do the job, which
But
I would enjoy.
you would consider for this current governor's race?
It's still something that is still mulling around in my head, but I'm being told by many that you've got to make a decision soon because there's so
You
many
can make
other
one right
candidates
now
out
if you
there.
want. We're live.
I know you would love that. So that would really kickstart this programming.
There you go. All right. County Executive Hackel,
Appreciate you,
thank you for your time.
bet.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
bud.